completely believe that leadership can be learned. One of our organization values is growth mindset, and growth mindset has learning embedded into it. And our ability to cope with the situation is far superior. So, as a value, we strongly believe in growth mindset and learning. Culture is like a lubricant. It runs like a well-oiled machine, runs the enterprise like a well-oiled machine. And that's exactly what we did in Max Life Insurance. I'm often reminded again of these two lines where, the poet says, जिंदगी दो लफ्जों में यूं अर्ज है, आधी कर्ज है और आधी फर्ज है.
क्या बात है. Is there a price of leadership?
More than price, it's a treasure.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. It's a call to duty, and I think the more we fulfill, the better it gets.
I am Prasenjit Bhattacharya, co-founder and CEO at Great Manager Institute. Welcome to the Great Managers League Leadership Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. With me, we have Shailesh Singh. So Shailesh is the Chief People Officer and Senior Director at Axis Max Life Insurance. With over 25 years of experience, he is somebody who has created great workplaces. And it would be my pleasure to delve into Shailesh as a person and also as a professional. Welcome, Shailesh.
Thank you, Prasenjit. Truly an honor for me to be here with you.
I have known you for decades, actually, and it's very interesting that we have not had these kind of conversations more often. So help us understand you as a person, going back to your roots. And I know you are from Hazaribagh, is that correct?
That's the place where Sainik School is situated. So I spent most of my childhood there. Yes. But I come from a place called Raxaul in Bihar.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your early childhood and right up to your education.
Raxaul is a place situated in district East Champaran, and the famous Mahatma Gandhi movement has its origins there, where he led the movement against Britishers forcing Indo production. Starting from there, but I come from a farming family, and to get into Sainik School, which was then the most prestigious, reputed school in Bihar, the ratio of selection of students was 100 out of 10,000 that used to appear for that entrance test. So it was some sort of a celebration in the village when I qualified and for Sainik School. My father that way was extremely futuristic to have taken and made that effort, and I landed in Sainik School, which was it's about 700 kilometers from my place, and that in itself was a big transition for me. I've never stayed till that point in time, never ever stayed away from my parents, my village, and therefore this whole emotional stuff about staying away from parents, and it took me some time to really acclimatize. And Sainik School was a fairly demanding setup overall. Even now when I look back, one, I sense pride, but alongside and gratitude as well. It was a turning point for me and for my career, for my life. I spent about 7 years, Sanjeet, and I can tell you, if I have a chance to, or if I have an opportunity to send children to Sainik School, I would do that now any day. I couldn't do that for my children because I was away to Dubai later, but I would have done that anyway. The amount of discipline that gets instilled there, the kind of hard work, the kind of execution excellence, the kind of regimentation that a Sainik School does, it just does wonders. It transformed me completely. Some of my leadership traits, I trace them to their origins in my Sainik School and schooling, where you just go through a regimentation and you are made fit. And I did qualify for the army, got a certificate saying fit to become an officer in the army. I qualified from 19 SSB, Allahabad. When you are a house captain or a school captain, and when you are the master of ceremony for 40, 50 functions, Uh, I led the physical training of 800 students, and I was right at the top when the chief minister of Bihar was visiting, Jagannath Mishra in those days. Uh, I was right there at the stage for 50 plus, ceremonies. All of those really groomed me very well, right? I took to reading. I read Dinkar, I read Shakespeare, my love for literature. I trace all of those to Sainik School. So extremely grateful for having got that kind of rooting in Sainik School. Uh, the kind of hard work that I can undertake today, the kind of discipline that I follow, the kind of say-do ratio that I believe in, all of those are nothing but treasures that I actually got from Sainik School. So extremely grateful for that transformation that I underwent there.
Wow. And I think, in a sense, that brings us to the essence of leadership, which is all about deliberate practice and doing something intentionally in a disciplined manner consistently. And that's the learning that you got at Scenic School. A lot of my own myths about Scenic School has been busted by you when you said that you actually read Shakespeare and Dinkar in Scenic School. I thought these were all very toughies who are, always in physical sort of exercises, preparing for the army, but they actually give a very holistic education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Sainik School curriculum is designed around creating a balanced, a full personality. And therefore, the focus on physical training to mental training to how do you, participate in extracurricular activities. Some of my conviction around harmony in life, I trace back to those days again. Harmony in life for anything to sustain. And when I therefore reflect on diversity, when I reflect on inclusiveness, I mean, those are all, when I go back to the origins, I see it all there. It is all there. Extremely balanced curriculum and extremely demanding curriculum. You discover your own new boundaries and horizons every day there. You think you are done, you are not done. This school will get more out of you and you will discover new horizons. So, extremely grateful.
Wow. And you mentioned something which I also get to hear from many leaders, which is the diversity and inclusion which you experience, particularly in your case, coming from a rural background, where you actually get to meet students of all kinds from all communities, religion, caste, and so on and so forth, or class, for example. And one would have expected that from there you would straight away join the army. You did qualify for the army.
Yes.
And what was the turn that took you to a management institute, and what happened after that?
In those years there was this terrible craze for civil services, and I was really no exception. I understood little of it. My parents understood more of that, and I was completely swayed by their thinking, and I was pushed to Delhi. They really wanted me to compete, and they saw me as someone who could really join civil services, and that's something which of course fascinated me. But so I, even though I qualified for the army, I let go of that opportunity and I moved to Delhi University, where I pursued political science honors. Initially literature, actually English, and then switched to political science honors purely with the aim of qualifying for civil services. However, as I spent some time in Delhi, it became very apparent to me that you know writing long essay type answers, answering those questions, and writing a few pages in response was really not something that I would enjoy. I am someone who is a lot more, and maybe it's coming from my Sainik schooling, where I'm more action oriented, here and now. I can debate, challenge, discuss, agree, disagree, do all of that. But and I'm analytical, don't get me wrong, but then to write those kind of, I wasn't enjoying it. So I never ever appeared at civil services, as destiny would have it. And then I found out about MBA, institutes, uh, found out about some premier institutes, and one of the seniors from Delhi University told me about that, and that's how I got to know of IRMA, which I found extreme. IRMA is Institute of Rural Management, Anand, Gujarat. It is an institute set up by Government of Switzerland and Government of India, and the best part of it was led by none other than Dr. Kurian. I found that the whole story about Gujarat cooperatives and Dr. Kurian at the helm of the affairs was extremely fascinating for me. And I said, no, this is the place that I ought to, try. And then I competed for it and I qualified, and that's how I moved from Delhi University to IRMA, Gujarat.
I visited IRMA almost 27, 28 years back. I was simply amazed by the infrastructure that was created, which was superior to many colleges and maybe equivalent or better than some of the IIMs. So tell us a little bit about your IRMA experience, and after Sainik School, how do you compare and contrast that?
You know, like you rightly said, IRMA was ahead of its times. And I would attribute that to Dr. Kurian. You know, big people really think big. Dr. Kurian was certainly one of them who was ahead of his times. The kind of difference he made to farmers' lives, millions of them, by setting up Amul, which is Anand Milk Union Limited, was just amazing. And he did the same thing when it came to setting up this institute. His vision, his desire was that we have to have farmers and their cooperatives as competitive as any private institution, any private enterprise. And to that goal, it needed a cadre of trained managers. And therefore, he set up this institute. But, he could set up any other institute. To your question, in terms of its infrastructure, he was truly a visionary. I mean, that setup, and I'm talking of 1989, 90, 91, those years, you get in that institute, you feel like you are in Switzerland in many ways. The way it is maintained, air conditioned libraries, well made classrooms, infrastructure, hostels for students, the mess, all of it was, none of the, I had not seen, and I don't think I have seen since then, even today, many institutes, of with that level of infrastructure and thinking, the quality of, faculty, the way he used to follow the curriculum, discipline, all of that. So there was some bit of commonality between Sainik School in terms of class, quality, infrastructure, desire to do good to the society, give back. Some of those elements were common. Alongside, I think what he added beautifully was, capability, managerial skills, being competitive. He wasn't someone who really believed in subsidies. He believed in, competing purely on competence, on merit. And therefore, this institute has its origins in that kind of thinking. And I picked up badminton there, which is another passion that I pursue. I really enjoyed it. And to have a badminton court, indoor court, multiple of them, and I'm talking, some 30 years back, was just ahead of its times. But thanks to Dr. Kurian and National Dairy Development Board, which really did a fabulous job. And I thought, after Sainik School, after Delhi University, I kind of had picked up life's ropes. But IRMA, gave me a push. IRMA made me realize that I am going to discover new horizons of myself, like I was doing in Sainik School. I mean, I almost had a feeling, that if I don't stay competitive, if I don't work hard enough, I may be pushed out of the institute. That's the kind of feeling you got there, and that's kind of demands that institute placed on all of us. Thoroughly enjoyed those years, but worked extremely hard to pick up. And IRMA ensures that. I mean, this is the power of a Sainik School or IRMA for that matter, that there is your commitment, but then there is a superimposition of a demanding curriculum from them and discipline that gets more out of you. When you think you are at 100, you discover 120 there. And I stay grateful and will stay grateful ever to both Sainik School and IRMA.
And how was the transition from IRMA to your work life? And you did initially work at NDDB, if I am not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
And then quite a stint across multiple companies at GE before your current organization, where also you have been there for a very long time. So explain the transition and how did you take these decisions at different points in time?
At IRMA, as I graduated and there were campus interviews, I had several options and offers. I was very lucky. While I'd worked hard, but I think in all the interviews that appeared, I had those offers. So some 7-8 offers, after which you can't appear at more interviews. And therefore, I was blessed to that extent. And what I finally landed with was joining the management pool of National Dairy Development Board. NDDB was then creating a pool of professionals who would go out, and NDDB was a nodal body of all dairy cooperatives. So each state has its own brand. Uh, you know, Punjab has Verka, Bihar has Sudha, there is Mother Dairy, and so on, Parag, and so on. They're all, cooperative brands of each state, Saras in Rajasthan. And sometimes, when they were led by government or cooperatives and they didn't have the managerial capability, they would sometimes go into losses. They would sometimes, not make money, and therefore farmers and their interests would be compromised. NDDB had these trained managerial personnel, many of them coming from IRMA and elsewhere, who were deputed, and the government of that state and central government would hand it over to NDDB to run and manage. So NDDB was planned to create a cadre of personnel in different functional streams. Management pool was one, and I found that extremely exciting. It's a bit like, and the title also was fairly flashy and glamorous. Officer on special duty. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, as
it's
I got
like the Tata Administrative Services.
sort of, and the fact that one was exposed to, after IRMA, being exposed to on the job all streams, whether it is finance or marketing or communications or HR, you were exposed to practically to all aspects of a job. And I found that very, very balanced and very intense again. And we were put out for, so when I understood the model, I was excited. I said, this is the one that I'm going to. And to be truthful, I hadn't really made up my mind that I will pursue HR till that point of time. It was actually having got into the management pool of NDDB, and when I was put through this, this 3 to 4 months of intensive training and exposure, where we were traveling actually all India. So we would have covered easily, 15 to 20 states at that point of time. This was planned by the company, and then I found my sweet spot. I found that, my sweet spot is really to be a change agent. NDDB was preparing me for one to be a change agent, and I found that gelling well with me, and therefore going into HR and as a change agent, really building capabilities, working with people, uh, raising their potential, engaging with them, etc. I found that exciting as a change agent. So and that was the genesis of why and how I transitioned from IRMA to management pool of National Dairy Development Board. And as a part of that, and that organization, I must pay my regards again and again to Dr. Kurian, Samrita Patel, who was then leading NDDB. I mean, to pick people like me, and I was deputed to Aisha Tractors at that point of time, because Aisha was implementing TQM, Total Quality Management, at their Alwar plant, and that was another life changing transition or moment for me. Truly grateful for being blessed to have got that opportunity. I think Aisha is another company that I have very high regards for. A bit like GE, Aisha was ahead of its time. Like I talked about the Sanic School, I talked about IRMA, NDDB. Aisha was ahead of its time. Small company, but big thinking. Small company, but you can ask all the questions that you want in life, and that's the way life should be. To bask in the glory of what you have accomplished in the past, and get static or complacent is not the way Aisha worked. A very vibrant environment. TQM was under implementation, Toyota practices. I saw workers, demonstrating to the leadership team, and those days there were these overhead projectors that were used, and laminated sheets, etc. But the enthusiasm was so infectious. The kind of work that was happening in the factories, I really learned a lot. Quality and belief in excellence that I continue to carry today, Prasenjit, I owe to really those days in Aisha. Just amazing, what that can.
I think what you have said is so foundational, that institutions create cultures that in turn impact the DNA of the people who are in those institutions. And you talked about Sanic School, you talked about NDDB. Aisha, with the TQM experience, started Aisha Consultancy Services.
Right.
And in 1995, I joined Aisha Consultancy Services. So very familiar with what happened at Alwar and multiple other locations of Aisha. And there is something about the values, the ethics that these organizations have, which stay with you for the rest of your life.
True.
And even when you meet somebody today, and if that same person has worked in these organizations, you know that if this guy is from Sainik School, there's going to be something in common between me and him.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's so fascinating. So that's about cultures, and you experienced some really strong cultures. What was your most fulfilling experience of really creating a culture which is both high trust and high performance kind of culture, and how did you go about it?
My belief in culture is extremely deep. I'm a convert, and actually I use these lines in Hindi to express what I mean. एक शायर ने कहा है कि जिसने तुझे अब तक देखा नहीं है, जिसने तुझे अब तक देखा नहीं है, कयामत क्या है वो समझा नहीं है. That's the power of culture. And I tire myself out of telling people that come and join this bandwagon and experience it for yourself. Culture has the power of serving and fulfilling everything that you want, and in a very nice way. Culture is not something that is so obvious. It is not a project. It is not a one-time thing. And therefore, whether in my years in NDDB or Aisher or later in GE, and then of course Max Life, where I am today, I have been a recipient of great cultures, and I have also been a contributor to this journey. And to your question now, in terms of where high trust, high performance culture. So in GE, I picked up a lot and also deployed a lot. A great culture, absolutely. Having said that, GE is a global company. GE has a lot of high quality products, technology. But when I moved to Max Life, for example, where the competition is absolutely cutthroat, and a company which has grown. So when I joined, we had about 6,500 employees. I'm talking of the year 2012. Today, we have about 25,000 employees. We have about 15,000 part-time associates. We have about 60 to 70,000, agent advisors. We are talking of a 1 lakh extended family, 1 lakh plus. And we operate out of 400 plus cities, in India. Now, how do you, how do you get to deliver or achieve what you want? So, for example, growth. If you're looking for, let's say, a 20% growth, or you are looking for a bottom line, you're looking for serving your customers well, you are looking for higher, a superior employee experience, customer experience, all of those. A lot of times, leaders I've seen in many companies will tend to look for a particular intervention or initiative and a project. And those are all welcome and those help. My conviction, however, is in a slightly different camp. I think if you get this right in terms of people first, and second, culture, I think half the job is done, because it perpetuates itself. I also apply another lens, that there is this lens also I find extremely powerful. In life, I've seen, Prasenjit, there is a cost of doing something, and there is a cost of not doing something. A lot of times people tend to focus on the cost of doing something, and they may see that as expensive or difficult in the short term. And I draw their attention to the fact that please look at also the cost of not doing it. If you don't have the right kind of a culture, I mean, culture is like a lubricant. It runs like a well-oiled machine, runs the enterprise like a well-oiled machinery. And that's exactly what we did in Max Life Insurance. As we were growing, we were completely mindful that with this rapid growth that we are aspiring for, one of the earliest casualties is culture. With growth, as new people come in, as new cities get added, new channels get added, new products get launched, there is continuous flux that's happening. And culture runs the risk of dilution. In fact, for large companies, if you look at history, many companies, large companies, we all have seen, sometimes they have perished, they have not survived, they've not done well because they've not been able to manage growth. Growth in itself, after a point of time, becomes the biggest challenge for companies to handle. And we were completely mindful and aware of this, and we were absolutely alert. And as a leadership team, I've been fortunate in Max Life to have a leadership team that fully understands this, and the conviction on talent, people, culture. It's like preaching to the choir. So that has never been an issue, and that's very important. The culture is top down. It does require people at the top, the senior people, to believe in it. I was fortunate to do that. So in Max Life, where we were growing, we never let go of our own model of believing and being the best in people. Always. That is something that has been the core of everything that we do. And this is not just HR led in Max Life. That's the second part of this conversation. It is supervisor led. In Max Life, we very strongly believe that, again, for culture to not get diluted and for the consistency of experience that we are looking at right till the periphery, the last mile, it is important that we have. I use the example, this simple example of telecom boosters. Supervisors are telecom boosters, where if the signals are weak, a telecom booster picks up signals and then boosts them again to the next tower, and so on, and then you get to the periphery and you get, it's like a booster. Supervisors are like that. If we leave things to happen on their own, they don't happen. And therefore supervisory belief at each level, and understanding what it takes to continue to hire the best people, continue to engage with them, motivate them in the best possible manner, continue to develop them on their life cycle entirely. I think all of that we have been very, very focused on in Max Life. So while we have focused on numbers, we have also focused on the how of it, which is, and people being the center of it. I also must mention that we may perhaps be amongst very few companies, Sanjeev, who assess our leaders not just on goals but also on values. So we assess our leaders on goals, which is for the year, but we also assess them on values like caring, collaboration, growth mindset, people leadership, customer obsession. These are the 5 values that we have, and that institutionalizes, and therefore the consistency of experience. And I always remind myself, if I'm sitting in Gurgaon, and how does my team feel here versus how does my team behave and feel in Coimbatore or Hooghly, is a very simple test of how deeply culture is embedded. And therefore, going back to the model that I was suggesting, to find out, is culture expensive, or is culture the right thing to pursue? Cost of not doing culture is so heavy. I have seen organizations, and we all have seen new age companies, many of them, new setups, and sometimes even established ones. If the culture is not right, there are some very big brands that we see, press talking about today, where their sustenance, it's not about one-time success. Culture ensures that this is continuity, and that is at risk when the right culture, the right people, the right leadership, the right talent is not there. And therefore, the moment we get this right, things begin to fall in place. We can handle we can be dynamic, and we can handle the turbulence, we can handle the market environment, the headwinds, and all of that. Makes it a lot more easier because you have capability building. Actually, जहाँ नहीं culture होता है, there is another 2 lines that I'm reminded of. किसी ने कहा कि अगर culture नहीं, if the organization is just cobbled together and doesn't have institutional practices around culture, how will it look? And this is about the cost of not having culture, and you will see it with this lens. And the poet says, रास्ते जुदा जुदा हैं, मंजिल जुदा जुदा. रास्ते जुदा जुदा है, डाइवर्जेंट. रास्ते जुदा जुदा है, मंजिल जुदा जुदा. ये भीड़ तो है, मगर कारवां नहीं. वाह, कारवां बनाना है हमें, और हम उस मिशन पे हैं. Our desire is to bring people together and converge, and that's when it starts working like a well-oiled machinery. You experience true power. The friction that otherwise that can come at every cog and of the wheel and every link of the chain, it's just so much we don't realize. It has derailed organizations and will continue to derail. But when you start steering minds, which is the power of culture, when you start way of thinking, their behavior, alignment, friction goes away. Imagine a friction amongst 1 lakh extended family. If that's very high, where will we be led? It will consume all the energy that we have, all the money, all the capital that we have to manage.
I have interacted with your senior management for the last 10-15 years. You have been a great place to work for more than 10 years, and that is an amazing testimony to the culture that you talk about. How do you actually get the kind of leadership that you have in an industry which is fairly transactional? And I remember your current CEO was the head of finance when he was heading the Great Place to Work internal committee, not you as the HR head. And that was how passionate he was about creating a culture, being the head of finance. Uh, is it a stroke of luck that you have such great people in your leadership team? Or what you talked about the values survey? What happens if somebody does not get good feedback in the values survey? What do you do, in other words, to create that kind of leadership team?
I think there has been a method in this madness. A lot of our leaders are homegrown leaders. We very rarely have to hire from the market at senior levels. At band 3 and above, almost 40 to 50% of our leaders for maybe almost a decade have come from our internal pipelines, number one. And at the senior most level, almost 90% have been all homegrown. And the current CEO, for example, who was earlier the CFO, and you rightly mentioned and called out, and I remember, and that is the power of Max Life, where it is not just HR that is thinking HR. Every leader is thinking, every leader is a people manager first. People leadership is one of the values that we assess our people on. And we all take it extremely and we do it collectively, by the way. We also have a rhythm of bringing everything back to our EMC, which is Executive Management Committee, and debating that very hard before we arrive at a conclusion. So this becomes a norm and a practice in the organization. So even if someone who is maybe relatively new or hasn't got it right, they have time to align and acclimatize themselves fully, very gradually and very nicely in a subtle manner, while we also take care when we put them in these roles that we look for the configuration, we look for the DNA, we look for the the right clicks from a people perspective, culture perspective. Only functional competence is not enough in Max Life for people to get to those levels. So that's one, as a model. Second, we've been lucky also, we've been blessed, the way we work and the kind of people we have got over a period of time. I think they not just acclimatize and integrate with the system, they start playing stellar roles in terms of leading this agenda. So adding to, for example, the current CEO, not only was he involved in the Great Places to Work journey, sponsoring, anchoring some of that, supporting it, we went on to switch our appraisal system, I mentioned, from goals and competencies to goals and values when he took the role. Another, and that makes so much of a difference, and it's institutionalized now at all levels. We assess our people on values, and many other executive committee members, they lead streams, different streams of culture, across these there will be HR team partnering with them, supporting with them, but it is led by leaders, and I find it extremely powerful. When leaders do it, they role model, they inspire, and the very subtle signal to the institution at large is that this matters and it is important in Max Life and Access Max Life now. It used to be Max Life, now it's Access Max Life. And that signaling does wonders. When leadership models it, believes in it, actions it, it happens. Versus doing a project which peters away after some time. It will have some impact, but not necessarily lasting impact. And this is done on a regular basis. So in Max Life, all such engagement surveys, people related outcomes, they are presented centrally first at the Executive Management Committee level, and then each leader takes this home to their constituency. They go through, they are supported by HR in terms of analyzing the data. They individually, personally disseminate this themselves to their larger teams, and then they follow through on actions in areas that require attention. And this is done like a well-oiled machinery, year after year. So when this is anything that is reinforced again and again of this kind, um, it gets to you. It gets to you. You just can't ignore. You cannot but begin to believe in this, and then you become a recipient and a beneficiary of it, and this becomes a cycle. which reinforces itself. And then you see the power of it. It shows in engagement, shows in productivity, it shows in attrition, being managed better. It shows in leadership pipeline. It shows talent coming up. All of those, I think, are beautifully done. And that whole orchestra, once a leader is understood, thereafter, they start leading it from the front, and they speak up for these issues. Sometimes, if one leader misses out on an element or a particular issue or a theme, I am 100% sure in Max Life, some other leader is going to pick and bring that to the executive management committee and say that this is not the right way of approaching this for a company that is caring. Let's relook at it, and we will relook at it. But that's the power of it.
I have personally witnessed the kind of honesty that you have in your executive team and the ability to bring up sometimes the hard truths and tough questions. Leadership, it's been our attempt to demystify it. It's in some organizations now that connect, develop, inspire has become a common language for managers and supervisors. It struck me the other day when I was trying very hard to push my daughter to do something, and I realized that I can't jump and develop her or try to develop her without connecting. And I changed my strategy. I went back home, I changed tack, I spent some time figuring out what's happening with her, in her mind, how worried she is that very soon she will have to start working and her salary is not going to be good enough, and so on and so forth. Now, that opened up a lot of possibilities for her to accept my suggestions. And this very simple thing that as a manager, as a leader, you have to build trust by connecting with people. You have to develop your people. And at that point in time, you have to really give them the challenging sort of objectives which they themselves are not sure that they will be able to achieve. Do you think leadership is something that can be learned? And to what extent do you think it comes from your own experiences?
First and foremost, I completely believe that leadership can be learned. I personally believe everything in life can be learned. One of our organization values is growth mindset, and growth mindset has learning embedded into it. And we really encourage our people to be learners all the time. We believe that learning brings dynamism, makes us more adaptable, and our ability to cope with the situation is far superior. So as a value, we strongly believe in growth mindset and learning. So I do believe that leadership can be learned. Having said that, I think, depending on how aware each person is and how determined each person is, there'll be a difference of output or a pace that we can see in each case. In our case, I think as an institution, I think we have tried that very hard. We have tried that extremely hard, amongst ourselves, in terms of ensuring that there's a learning environment, there's an ecosystem that fosters learning, and that leadership is not left to chance. And therefore, we, over this last decade, if I look at any point in time in Max Life, in one channel or another, there will be leadership journeys that we continue to take year after year first. So it's institutionalized as a practice. It's not left to chance, number one. And therefore, they will go through a regular, curriculum, projects, classroom training, discussions. That's one. The second, and I think perhaps the most powerful part, is leaders developing leaders. We don't tire of telling ourselves that leaders' top job is to create leaders. Business will happen, customer service will happen, we will take care of the overall, all other stakeholders, all of that. But we need to have the right people, and therefore leaders create leaders. Hiring right, developing right, engaging right, they're all part of this equation that we talk about. So we insist on leaders practicing leadership, whether it is coaching conversations, mentoring conversations, feedback through the year to people. All of those are part of the rhythm that is developing leaders as a machinery. And I have taken pride earlier in GE, which is supposed to be known as the talent factory for the world. In some ways, in insurance here, we have managed to create ourselves as a talent factory. And therefore, many of our ex-employees are today CEOs and CXOs of insurance companies. And sometimes people ask me, Prasenjit, this question. They ask me, um, how do you find this? X person or a leader is now gone to another Y company. I am absolutely not perturbed, disturbed at all. I said that was the destination. That was the destination. We people will outgrow their roles at some point of time, and for an organization to hold them captive after a point in time, if they have outgrown, becomes counterproductive. Our job is to ensure that we continue to give our best and create the best leaders that this sector can create, and we take pride in that and have them grow. And most of them have grown and taken roles. They are in Max Life. All our CXOs here are all homegrown, almost all of them. And then there are some who a few years back, as the organization grow, they had outgrown them, which is very natural. So a bit like G, it's a mini G in that sense, where we don't hold on to people like this. We hold on to people if it is a win-win. And that's another frame that we apply to ourselves. It has to be a win-win for both the talent and of course the enterprise both. Otherwise it doesn't serve its purpose and doesn't last. Sustenance is going to be important. And we actually use the analogy of a car, Prasenjit. Oftentimes I use this analogy where I use the first three letters of career, car, as an analogy, and I share, in this car there is only one seat, which is the driver's seat, and you are in the driving seat. Um, so you decide which way, and it's because and you have to check the tire pressure, the brake oil, the gear oil, the tire pressure, and if the car is in good enough condition to run and all of that, because you know your career. You will know what your destination is and which way you will go. As a leader, do you want to go left? Do you want to take the right turn? So it is not that the organization is abdicating its responsibility. No, not at all. There is a larger ecosystem to nudge, facilitate, hold you together, and help you move in that direction. It is for you to pick what works for you. Like a big market, a big bazaar. You from the shelf pick what you need in this, which training intervention, but what do you like doing, which channel you want to work in, what kind of work do you enjoy. Have a conversation with the supervisor, talk to your HR, do all of that, but take charge, be in the driver's seat. And so there's some of those models and some of those development initiatives we undertake for people to understand and take that ownership and support them.
So if I were to summarize, what I hear you say is that leadership development is not about one project or one intervention. It is creating an entire ecosystem which facilitates that talent factory or the leadership factory, at the same time giving the individual the responsibility of charting his or her own course, and by taking advantage of that ecosystem that you talked about. My last question to you, Shailesh, is there a price of leadership? In our country, almost everyone wants to be a quote unquote leader. And the reason we started Great Manager Institute, and people ask me, why is it not called a Great Leader Institute, is because of our firm belief that there is a leader inside everyone. And therefore, it's not a question of becoming somebody else. It is a question of discovering the leader within. I mean, who would have thought that a Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in South Africa would become the father of the nation at some point in time, right? So therefore, my question to you is there a price that one has to pay if you really want genuinely to be a leader? And when I say leader, I don't just mean in terms of perquisites and roles and levels, but in terms of being someone who genuinely cares for people and people voluntarily looking up to them.
Very nice question, Prasenjit, and you've taken me deeper into this subject. My own thinking and reflection is as follows, and someone has said this beautifully. Someone has said that in the first half of our life, we are generally chasing ambition. And in the second half of our life, we are looking for meaning. To me, leadership, which is oftentimes a lot more clearer in the second half of life, is about finding that meaning. It's also in some ways a call of duty. When I look back at my own life, your life, all of us around us, I'm immensely grateful all that we have got our life, from parents, teachers, to a Sainik school or IRMA, or at various stages, different people who have done so much for us. We may have some issues, we may want this world to become better every day, nothing wrong with that. But in that process, how we have grown and how other people have made us and contributed to where we have got today, I remain immensely grateful. When I reflect, therefore, from the perspective of searching that meaning, I'm often reminded again of these two lines where, the poet says, Jindagi दो लफ्जों में यूं अर्ज है, जिंदगी दो लफ्जों में यूं अर्ज है, आधी कर्ज है और आधी फर्ज है.
क्या बात है.
So I find life getting summarized in these lines. और मुझे लगता है कभी there is this part of the furj, the duty, that is a call on leaders. And this is not for anyone else, by the way. Your question, is there a price to it? I think, more than price, it's a treasure.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. It's a call to duty. And I think the more we fulfill, the better it gets. Even if we make a small difference to someone's life, if we create a spark in some corner, in some pockets, I'm telling you, and I learned some bit of that in IRMA also, when Dr. Kurian was beautifully, leading, such a noble, leader, and made difference to life of millions of farmers. Some farmers may not even have known him in different parts of their country, but his cooperative model and what he did continues to, benefit them. Now, I find it so fulfilling, therefore, in my role, and often my call to leaders is that this is also giving back time. And it is not for anyone else, it is for ourselves. We go back a lot more fulfilled, better, and we are growing in the process. And it is not just growing about skills, but growing as human beings. There is no point in building buildings without building men. This journey remains incomplete, and that everyone must understand, all of us. So I think it's a treasure. I think it's a privilege. I think it's a duty. And I think if someone does not embrace it, it is a miss in some ways.
If I were to sum up what you have said in just 2 words, आपने 2 लफ्जों की बात की, I would say it's a journey of grit, which is resilience and gratitude.
Absolutely.
That you are able to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Pleasure meeting you, Shailesh.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, Prasenjit. Thank you.